All right, y'all, welcome to the show. Let me warn you up front. It is early. My brain is not working, but nonetheless, I'm going to plow ahead and try to deliver a coherent show for y'all. So I do have a lot of stuff to get to today. I will be responding to Dave Rubin later in the show. He, of course, viciously smeared Crystal a few days ago. And boy, oh boy, do I have a lot to say in response. You're not going to want to miss that one. So we'll get to that. We also have some confirmation about Israel bombing safe zones. These are areas that they designated as safe, and then they repeatedly bombed it. We'll also get to updates on the protests outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner. It was a madhouse of some awesome protesting. And then later on, Bill Maher goes mental on some pro-Palestine protesters. He really hit a new low yet again. And then you're not going to want to miss the segment about the pro-Israel goon, the Zionist, who chanted "kill the Jews" just so he could get the pro-Palestine protesters arrested. Oh my God. I have a couple clips that are just the quintessential cry bully bullshit. I have a Karen walking a dog pretending like pro-Palestine protesters are violent when they're not at all, and she's the one causing problems. So again, we'll get to all that and much more. Everybody do me a big favor. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps out massively. It costs you absolutely nothing. All right, let's go ahead and dive into it. We talked about this, honestly, a long time ago now. This was months and months ago. This idea that the IDF was purposefully bombing safe zones. They were also bombing the roads that are on the way to the safe zones. They would tell Palestinian civilians, hey, this place is not safe. You got to go to this other place. And then as they were on the road, they would bomb it and kill them. Okay, that's piece of evidence number 4,612, that they're killing civilians on purpose. Now, this was already news. It was big news. And we were discussing it. It was all over new media and independent media. There were good outlets that do the work on the ground that were reporting this, but it was largely silent from Western media. It wasn't there. Well, now, months and months and months after the fact, as has been the trend with other Israeli atrocities, finally Western media catches on and reports it. So this is on ABC News, and just, I'll say no more, watch the report.
March 26, 2024, 4 p.m., the aftermath of an airstrike in Rafah in southern Gaza. Victims buried under the rubble. Rima Shabir is rushed to the hospital as her father attempts first aid. An NBC News investigation reveals that this is one of at least 7 deadly strikes in areas our Gaza team filmed after the IDF had explicitly designated them as safe in December. This one in...
That's a lot of safe zones that were bombed. That doesn't look like an oopsie to me. What does it look like to you?
Rafah's Al-Zuhur neighborhood, identified as one of 3 evacuation zones in a leaflet dropped over Gaza, and on the Israeli military's website in a map last updated in December. When asked if there was anything more recent, the IDF told us the map was, quote, still accurate. Our investigation reveals that the IDF targeted Al-Zuhur, Al-Shabura, and Tal el-Sultan after it told residents to head there. On January 9th, an airstrike in Tal el-Sultan. The attack hits the home of the Nofal family there, killing 15. On February 12, 2024, our crews filmed the aftermath of an airstrike on Al-Shabura camp. They asked us to go to the Shabura area because it is safe. This is the safe area? Look around you. What happened? This man says. On April 20th at 10 p.m., also in the Shabura district, a building leveled. Among those killed, a pregnant woman who NBC News reported on earlier this week. Her premature baby briefly survived, but died days later. We asked the Israeli military multiple times to comment on the strikes documented in our report, providing precise locations and dates. It addressed one of the attacks, replying, the IDF is not aware of any strike at the provided coordinates and times in the query, blaming Hamas for telling people to ignore military directives.
They're trolling us. The IDF commits war crime after war crime, and then they troll us about it. This is an open-handed slap to Joe Biden and the White House. And so far, they've just taken it. They just sit there and bleed. And he's willing to blow his election for a far-right genocidal freak like Netanyahu. God, man, I'm trying to not go too hard on the media here because at least they're reporting it. But this is months and months and months late, man. We knew about this a long, long time ago, and just now They're getting around to it.
The IDF will act against Hamas wherever it operates with full commitment to international law. Human Rights Watch program director Sari Bashi tells us these strikes are not isolated incidents.
They go to the places they were told to go to, and then they get hit either by an airstrike or by a ground force invasion.
Is there anywhere safe in Gaza?
No, there's nowhere safe in Gaza.
For the almost 1.5 million Palestinians crowded in southern Gaza, there is nowhere left to flee. And for Rima Shabir, the girl whose father's blood-stained T-shirt told of his frantic attempt to revive his child, it was too late. Rima died in a place where she and others were told they would be safe from harm. Hala Gorani, NBC News, Tel Aviv.
There's no rebuttal to this. There's no reasonable response to this about why what the IDF did was okay. It's not. Any reasonable moral person would say it's not. But here we are. I don't know how many atrocities have to be committed for people to wake up. I don't know what can shake the White House out of their complacency. We already have over 40,000 Palestinians dead. If that number got over 100,000, would they finally grow a conscience and a little bit of a spine? Because I tend to doubt it. This full dehumanization has happened. And that's why people can sit there and passively watch this and accept it. I got more for you. So the other day we discussed how Blinken floated this idea that, hey man, we know of some very specific IDF units that have committed atrocities. Definitely did human rights violations and war crimes. We're talking about proven torture, torture of the elderly, torture of young people. So we think we're going to sanction these people. This was the reporting from this guy, Barak Ravid, about a week ago. We talked about it on this show. Well, guess what? As I said in that segment, hey, the last time Biden did something like this or said he was going to do something like this, he didn't follow through. They picked out like the 3 or the 5 most extremist illegal Israeli settlers, definitely violating international law in the West Bank. And they said, we're going to sanction them. Well, guess what? When nobody was looking, they rolled the sanctions back like a couple weeks later. So it was all a PR move. It was a virtue signal move to say, we're cracking down on the extremists in Israel. Then they rolled it back. So that's a green light if I've ever seen one. You tried to show some accountability and consequences, and then you said, forget that, roll that back. Well, what message does that send? You guys do whatever the hell you want. And now, a unit that it's been proven they committed war crimes, an extremist IDF unit that was committing torture of innocent civilians. They said they were going to sanction them. Now they're like, never mind. The State Department has put on hold its plan to impose sanctions on the IDF Netza Yehuda Battalion for human rights violations in the occupied West Bank and is reviewing the issue in light of information Israel provided. And by the way, let's also point out this irony. All of the fighting, all of the ethnic cleansing and the genocide, it has been centered in Gaza because the Hamas attack on October 7th came out of Gaza. But now we're talking about torture done in the West Bank? The West Bank doesn't have Hamas. So even their fucking bullshit argument that they invoke every 12 seconds that every baby they kill is Hamas, that doesn't apply in any way, shape, or form, even theoretically, even with a stretch of an argument in the West Bank, where this torture is going on. So they said they would sanction. Guess what? They didn't sanction. I warned you. I told you this would happen. You guys remember Professor Rafat Al-Arir, poet, professor, was a very vocal voice on the side of Palestinian freedom and liberation. And he was murdered by the IDF. Now, the backstory as to how he got murdered is kind of wild. When there was that fake reporting going around that there were, Hamas put babies in ovens. Remember that? In the wake of October 7th, that fake news story, that hoax was floating around. Well, he tweeted something along the lines of, were they cooked with seasoning or something like that? I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the specifics, but it was poking fun at the absurdity of that notion, right? And then Barry Weiss chimed in. You guys know Barry Weiss, free speech absolutist Barry Weiss. I'm an intellectual Barry Weiss. She chimed in and she basically put a target on Rafat Al-Arir. And then within a couple weeks or a couple months, boom, the IDF murdered him. He even said after Barry Weiss targeted him, hey, if something happens to me, I want you to know I blame her. I blame her. So she took his joke out of context and was pretending like he's in favor of massacring babies and putting them in ovens, right? And then put a target on his back and he was murdered. Well, guess what? Now his family was murdered too. Israel just slaughtered the eldest daughter of Professor Rafat al-Arir, Shema, and his sole grandson, who was born shortly after Rafat's targeted killing in December. Shema, her husband and son were killed in a direct airstrike on their apartment near Al-Ramal Clinic in Gaza City. So yet again, they're doing it on purpose. They're killing civilians on purpose. There is no other reasonable conclusion. That's what's happening. We got more. Quds News Network tweeted this video out. I'm not going to play the video. It's dark. It's disturbing. During an Israeli occupation forces raid yesterday on Husan village near Bethlehem, soldiers shot tear gas inside a bakery and forced a Palestinian worker to close the doors, resulting in the killing of Hazim Dana, who suffocated inside. So as this user points out, gassed a Palestinian to death. Process it. I'll give you an update on the numbers. So look, these things used to come out every week or every couple weeks from Euromed Monitor, the human rights group. Then that slowed to a trickle, man. It's like every 2 or 3 weeks, and it's like every month, something like that. And the bottom line is they just don't have the personnel necessary anymore to get a totally accurate count. So it requires more work. It requires more time. And here's what we know as of right now. There's 42,510 Palestinians who have been killed. Of them, 38,621 are civilians. You do the math on that. The percentage of civilians killed is astronomically high. 15,780 children have been killed. 10,091 women have been killed. By the way, as I always point out, the discrepancy with these numbers and, say, the UN numbers or other numbers you might see coming out of Gaza is that these numbers include the people presumed to be dead under the rubble, which I think is a more accurate count. We're nearly at 80,000 people injured, 137 journalists killed, the most deadly conflict for journalists ever. 2 million Palestinians out of 2.3 million are homeless. 131,000 homes have been completely destroyed. 281,000 homes have been partially destroyed. And the list goes on and on. 445 schools have been attacked. 322 healthcare facilities have been attacked, including 29 hospitals. There's over 900 healthcare professionals who've been attacked, and of those, 356 have been killed. What else is there to say, man? Some incredibly, incredibly dark stuff. But I'm glad to see that Western media is catching up. But, of course, as per usual, it's too little too late. And just because the news is slowing down out of there doesn't mean that the reality on the ground isn't as tragic as we expect. It's dark, it's sad, it's pathetic. And the craziest thing is the answers are very straightforward, right? The answers are super straightforward. All that needs to happen is the U.S. needs to cut off the money, cut off the weapons, condemn Israel at the UN, bring up some war crimes charges, take down Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and the top Israeli commanders. And then we're starting to have a real conversation about justice. That's when we start having a real conversation about justice. But we are so far up shit's creek without a paddle that people don't even have hope of even cutting off the money and the weapons, even though Israel's carrying out a genocide and an ethnic cleansing right in front of our eyes. Doesn't get more disgusting than that. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.